Teshadale, and welcome back. So we are in week 15, and last week we started the new book, Luminous Essence, Mipham Rinpoche. And as a part of that, we went through the introductory material and the first of his 11 topics, and that was on the view. So we spent quite a bit of time going through that. So now we're going to go through 2 through 6 today. And so we start with meditative stability, which is the second of his topics. And in the commentary he says, this is essentially defined as the awareness abiding one-pointedly with a visualized object. So basic shamatha. Meditative stability is acquired through motivation, effort, mindfulness, alertness, and equanimity. The experience of tranquility, or shamatha, is refined by 9 kinds of skillful means, giving rise to experiences of bliss, radiance, and non-conceptualization. According to the inner classes of Tantra, meditative stability refers to the generation stage and perfection stage, or completion stage. In its most extensive form, it also has a middling form, and then both combined together. These usually occur in Mahayoga, and then in its concise form in Ana Yoga, and most concise form in Eti Yoga. So he's dividing it up and comparing it with the main yogic practices there. And then the perfection stage includes the path of skillful means, the energy channels, vital energy, points of seminal energy, the Ta Lung Tigli practices that we're familiar with. And so that's just an overview of what is being referred to in this particular chapter. So if we go to the actual text then, on page 68, so Mipham calls this absorption rather than meditative stability, so a little bit different terminology here. And each of these sections is divided into 4 parts and sometimes subparts within each of those. So in here Mipham talks about the essence, the division, the practices, in most cases, some cases principles, and the purpose. So he's divided those into those. And so we begin with the essence here. Below the quote, samadhi means a balanced mind. Train the mind such that one is able to rest one-pointedly on an observed object. It can also mean to rest in accordance with or in the same manner as an object that is undisturbed. So we place an object in front of us as our focus point. We look at that, we stay focused on that single-pointedly without being interrupted or disturbed by thoughts or other things that might happen in our environment. So then he talks about the divisions. So these things get divided up in various ways. And so here he talks first about the development and completion stages. The development stage purifies our predispositions related to the 4 types of birth. And you probably have heard those before, even if you don't have them memorized. But the egg, the womb, the moisture, and the miracle forms of birth that are often referred to in various texts. Alternatively, the next paragraph, gradual and instantaneous approaches is also taught. And there are a great number of other divisions, he said. There are lots of different ways that this can be divided up. In actuality, however, all practices that are classified as development stage are termed development stage absorptions. Sometimes when we talk about the development or generation stage, what we're talking about is a form of shamatha. Even if we're doing deity yoga, it's often referred to as a form of shamatha practice. It's just that the object of focus is different. Instead of focusing on our breath or focusing on some other physical object, we're focusing on a mental object, which is the deity, our visualization of that deity. And then the next paragraph there says, the completion stage consists of the path of means and the path of liberation. The former may rely upon the upper and lower gates, while the latter consists of the gradual and instantaneous non-conceptual practices of unity. So that would be like the Ati Yoga and so forth. And then, so those are the essential divisions, and then he has another subcategory here of temporal divisions. Absorption can be divided into blessed practice, imputed practice, and perfect practice. So the first one, the ultimate deity, is the indivisible basic space and wisdom. Through its power, the form body appears. If one visualizes such a deity, one's own essential nature will be blessed by the essential nature of the deity. So that's the blessed form. On the top of page 70, he continues, first, as one meditates on the deity, one trains devotedly with knowledge that this process is like pouring an alchemical elixir on iron. Second, one trains to become competent with the understanding that the form body is produced from the pure awakened mind, just as one creates a statue from melted gold. Third, a practitioner who has realized his or her nature to be pure perfects the absorption instantaneously. So you get it. You just focus on the object and you're there. Just like a reflection clearly appearing in a limpid pond. So then he goes on to the practice section here. The practice of meditative absorption, concentration. So here the calm abiding meditations are meaningful and easy, also common to the sutra approach. So one must gain stability and then proceed to develop it in a progressive manner. So once we first do the practices, we focus on attaining a degree of stability, and then we continue on in various stages beyond that. He has a subcategory here he refers to as the 5 flaws. So here are the kind of obstacles you might run into with this type of meditation. The first is laziness, then forgetting the instructions, dullness and agitation, failure to apply the antidotes, and applying the antidotes even though one is not dull or agitated. So any of those can be faults. Okay, the 5 flaws. And then he gives various remedies. If that should occur, one of those should occur, then there are remedies that we can use for those. The first of those is faith, the second yearning, then exertion or effort, then proficiency, mindfulness, introspection, attention, and equanimity. The first 4, he says, dispel laziness. And then on the top of the next page, mindfulness ensures that the instructions are not forgotten, while introspection allows one to notice when dullness and agitation occur. Attention enables one to apply antidotes. As dullness and agitation subside, one rests in equanimity without forming any concepts. Okay, so this is a non-conceptual kind of a practice, as shamatha is usually described. There are also 6 powers that are sometimes associated with these. So he lists those as being required to practice absorption in this manner. First is study, then contemplation, mindfulness, introspection, diligence, and complete familiarity. And those are for resting the mind within the context of the 4 types of attention, which he then lists next. The first of those are concentrated attention, occasional attention, uninterrupted attention, and effortless attention. So the goal is to reach that 4th stage here of getting to effortless attention. So we're able to place our attention on something and leave it there without any effort at all. We don't get interrupted, we don't lose it, we're able to stay concentrated on that object, wherever we happen to place it. So then he goes through what he refers to as the 9 methods for resting the mind, oftentimes referred to as the 9 stages of shamatha. So the first one here, settling, then continuous settling, resettling, complete settling, and then taming, pacifying, complete pacifying, attentiveness, and finally equipoise. So then a few lines down, he says, study leads to settling, contemplation leads to continuous settling, mindfulness to resettling and complete settling, introspection to taming and pacifying, diligence to completely pacifying and one-pointedness, and complete familiarity leads to equipoise. So he's hooking these things, connecting these things together here. The first attention relates to the first two mental states, the second attention to the third through seventh, and the third attention to the eighth, the fourth to the ninth. And then he talks about 5 different experiences, and this is basically another way of categorizing your stages of development in shamatha. And sometimes these are done as 4, sometimes as 5, in this case the 5. So first is the experience of movement. It's just like a cascading waterfall. So your mind, a monkey mind, your mind just keeps moving, you get distracted by all kinds of things. It's rumbling around just like a cascading waterfall. The second one is the experience of attainment, which is like a river gushing through a gorge. So it's still pretty rowdy, but it's not quite as rowdy as a waterfall. The third one is the experience of familiarity, which is like the flow of a large river. So now it's beginning to calm down. There may be occasional white water or rapids or something like that in the river, but it's definitely much more calm. The fourth is the experience of stability, which is said to be like a wave-free ocean. Never seen one of those myself, but you get the idea. I have seen lakes up in the mountains where there's no movement whatsoever. It's just like a glassy mirror. But that's the idea, that you're able to attain a very, very smooth level of stability. But that's not the end. The end is the fifth one, which is the completion stage, which is said to be like a mountain, very, very solid. Water, even though that it's completely still like a mountain lake, a fish might jump out of the lake and disturb it here and there. You get a few little ripples, or perhaps a breeze will come up and there'll be a few ripples that go across it and so forth. But a mountain, at least viewed from a distance, doesn't appear to move at all, at least in a short period of time. Over time, of course, we know that they erode and everything, but they tend to be very, very solid in our experience. So that's the metaphor here in terms of the completion stage being described. Going on to the next page then, he goes through these in some detail and explains each of these 9 stages. We won't go through each of those. I think that you're already familiar with each of those stages pretty well, so I don't think we need to spend time on that. But starting on page 75, a few of the comments that he makes then at the end of the initial going through each of the 9. The first full paragraph there, the final mountain-like experience, he says that mind blends effortlessly with the observed object. And then while emerging from this experience, it will feel as though the body has suddenly materialized. So during the experience, it's almost as if you don't even have a body. And then attachment, anger, other emotions will weaken and become less frequent. So we often refer to all of the practices within Buddhism as mind training, in general category. Well, that's what we're doing, is training our mind. And the more that we do that, the more effect it has on us post-meditation. And that's the goal, because it's not to become a great meditator sitting on the cushion, but to change our lives. And so that's the goal that we want to attain, is to be able to sustain that throughout everything else that we do, through having achieved some degree of meditative stability. And then various experiences of bliss, clarity, and non-thought may occur. Now these can be good things, but if you get attached to them, they can also be negative things. Dreams, he says, for the most part, will be purified. And then moreover, bliss, clarity, and non-thought may or may not involve equipoise in suchness. Therefore, know the key points of the path and do not conceitedly take few experiences of the resting mind to be the sublime path. So just because we have a few of these and it feels really good and it seems to match the description doesn't mean we're there yet. Okay? Don't assume that, and stay with it. Patience and persistence. And so a few other things that he notes here: the body and mind will become pliable, that is flexible. We can manipulate it in order to get it into these stages, free it up from other kinds of negative states, and one will be happy. And then going on to page 76, we'll feel light as cotton. One will also feel blissful, as though a stream of warm milk is suddenly filling the entire body. The body will become exceedingly pliable and capable of engaging in any virtuous activity. In the beginning, advanced pliability will occur at a gross level and then grow increasingly subtle. So when we're dealing with the various kinds of obscurations, afflictive emotions, mental obscurations that we might encounter, in the beginning we're able to deal with some of the more gross kinds of things, and then we were able to deal more and more with more subtle kinds of obscurations as a part of that. And then, a few lines down, then a subtle and delicate shadow-like pliability will appear that accords with unmoving meditative absorption. This calm abiding, now oftentimes we refer to shamatha as calm abiding, other times to single-pointed focus. I usually combine them together and say single-pointed calm abiding. So whether one trains in the development or completion stage, this approach will ensure that one's practice is genuine. So this is a fundamental focus of meditation. We develop our ability to stay focused, develop our attention, and then when we go into the generation and completion stage practices, we've already got that skill. And we can apply that skill then to those deity practices. In the middle of the next paragraph, practicing repeatedly with enthusiasm, exertion, mindfulness, introspection, and equanimity will lead you naturally to a state of non-distraction. You can rest well without any movement. The purpose then, the next category here, the purpose is that meditative absorption is the primary cause for accomplishing activity and spiritual attainments, which require awareness and stability. At the bottom of the page, the current scarcity of people practicing even the smallest activity of mantra is due to the lack of meditative absorption. So we really need to do these more foundational kinds of practices. So that's why in our Essentials class we start with the path of individual liberation, where this is emphasized. And that becomes the ground upon which then we build our pyramid of everything else in our ability to do that kind of mind training. In the next paragraph, about the middle of the paragraph, meditative absorption is what blesses mantra and mudra. So those are the essential points of the first one there, the looking at the meditative absorption, or looking at it in terms of concentration. Moving on to the next topic then is conduct. And in our commentary, all activities associated with body, speech, and mind are included here. So it compromises spiritual discipline on the path of skillful means and careful restraint. It comprises, is that what I said? It comprises spiritual discipline on the path of skillful means and careful restraint on the path of liberation. In periods of meditative absorption, conduct refers to the meditative stability itself. In post-meditation, it concerns phenomenal display which arises before the mind. All of the things that we see around us or hear, all the senses. The distinctive conduct associated with the practice of Mahayoga includes the rites of sexual yoga, which are the wrathful application of compassion. So looking to that section in the text on the bottom of page 77 here, we start again with the essence, moving on to page 78. And he defines conduct here from the Sanskrit word acharya, which refers to physical, verbal, and mental actions. So all of the things that we think, say, and do are included here. Under the divisions category, he first starts with two divisions. the disciplined conduct of the path means, and the conscientious conduct of the path of liberation. So the former refers to the activities of union and liberation, and then the latter, there are 7 types of conduct. These forms of conduct are for individuals of gradual inclination. There is also said to be an 8th activity, conduct free from acceptance and rejection, meant for individuals of an instantaneous inclination. So some people just instantly get it. Other people gradually work their way through until they're able to understand that. There are also other ways to divide conduct. One example is training in absorption during meditative equipoise and seeing all appearances as an illusion. That's one of the common things in Dzogchen or in some of the completion stage practices as well, whereby one freely enjoys the sense pleasures. Skipping the next paragraph, moving down in terms of time, there are 3. The first one is serving the master, receiving empowerment, upholding samayas, receiving instructions on practice, and not transgressing the guru's command. The second is various aspects of approach and accomplishment, and the third is the accomplishment, the applications of activity subsequent to the achievement of spiritual attainments. So those are 3 categories of development here as part of this. Then various principles, the third topic, subtopic here. In the common vehicles, the sense pleasures are taught to be obstacles to the path. Oftentimes the path of individual liberation is referred to as the path of renunciation, for example. Okay, so they're considered to be obstacles, so we renounce those. However, since all phenomena dwell in the great bliss of equality and purity, there is nothing to observe in terms of accepting or rejecting. Now, this is an Ati Yoga or Dzogchen approach. The path of abiding in whatever one desires in harmony with the realization of this nature bestows liberation quickly and easily like magic. This approach does not require asceticism or other forms of hardship. Such acts only create obstacles. For this reason, it is said to be a root downfall if a mantra practitioner feels contempt for and mortifies his or her own body. Apparently, there were some cases in the early tradition in which that was something that sometimes was done as a way of trying to reject something. They would mortify their own bodies in different ways, and the Buddha said, no, that's not what we're trying to do here. And they wrote down rules against doing that in the Vinaya. Therefore, although one joyfully partakes in sense pleasures, this approach is superior to the common vehicles. So we can do that, but we have to do it in a special way. It's just not going out the door and forgetting everything that you've learned. We have to keep in mind the basic principles that we've learned as a part of doing our practice when we apply these. So if we go to the next page, page 80 here, below the quote at the top, second line, some individuals fail to take an interest in the magnificent conduct of mantra and scorn the practice of union. And there are certain branches within Buddhism that tend to do that as well. This is a grave mistake. As a cause for sudden dawning of co-emergent wisdom, the Karma Mudra and the supportive jasmine-like bodhicitta are indispensable. To give them up is therefore said to be a root downfall of mantra. And then in the next paragraph, the co-emergent natural state, which the common paths take innumerable eons to realize, dwells primordially within oneself. So from the Hatha Yoga perspective, it's already there. We just have to uncover that. We have to realize it. And then the quote from the Great Bliss of Union of the Buddhas, down below that paragraph, among all wonders, the wonder of the female is the greatest. And then at the bottom of the page, likewise the Tantra of single ferocious hero states, There is no evil greater than action without desire. There is no merit greater than bliss. Therefore, settle the mind in equipoise and give rise to the bliss of desire. And again from the compendium of Vajra Wisdom. Second line, without joining the Vajra and Lotus, the three cognitions cannot be illustrated. One will not achieve the absorption of great bliss without being able to genuinely join the Bhaga and Linga. Simply by having intense interest exclusively in the absorption of great bliss will lead one to the level of a beginner and the training of a non-returner. So several citations here to back up his statement of the importance of that as a part of these practices. And Khenchen Lama, I've talked with him a little bit about this, and he says that this is very important in the yogi tradition, these practices. Second, neither should one have misgivings about the supreme method of liberation. And then jumping down to the bottom of the page, these days there are many people who ferociously brandish their Kalaya dagger at a doe effigy. But few are those who can summon the cause, sever karma and disturbing emotions, and the result, the beings of the three lower realms, into the support and then apply themselves in a genuine manner to transference of means of the mantric ritual of liberation. This is the forceful transference. We talked a little bit about that when it was covered in the other text. Even if one merely performs an approximation of the liberation ritual, innumerable benefits still occur. Then we'll move to the next page, the purpose, the fourth topic, subtopic here. To attain the temporal and ultimate spiritual attainments. So that's our purpose. Few lines down, 3 lines down. In short, conduct refers to the various activities that are in harmony with the practice of view and meditation. It also includes the mandala, the drawing images of the mandala, receiving and bestowing empowerment, abiding by the samayas, performing approach and accomplishment, making offerings, accomplishing enlightened activity, reciting mantras, and holding mudras. Those are all basically included in tantric meditation practices. Okay? And then at the bottom of the page, through this, be patient. As this form of patience engages in all appearances and activities as the play of wisdom, it is said to be the perfection of patience. So patience is extremely important in our practices. I often say persistence in patience, or joyful effort in patience, is very important as a part of that.